The conference room was bigger than Vexitar's entire ship. He sat at a table that could have seated 100 beings, feeling small and confused. Captain Harrison sat across from him, along with 2 other humans. Commander Lisa Martinez was a woman with dark skin and bright eyes. Dr. Pete Collins was an older man with a beard who kept looking at strange devices on his wrist. "This is quite impressive," Vextar said, trying to sound calm. "Your ship is unlike anything we have seen before." Harrison poured a cup of something hot and steaming. The smell was pleasant, but unfamiliar. "We're proud of the Leviathan. She took 20 years to build and represents our best technology." Lieutenant Crix shifted in his seat beside Vextar. The young Zephyrian's antenna kept twitching, which meant he was nervous. "Captain Harrison, may I ask about your defensive systems? Our government requires us to report on the military capabilities of all foreign vessels we encounter." The 3 humans exchanged glances. It was a quick look, but Vextar caught something strange about it. For just a moment, their eyes seemed to move in perfect coordination, as if they were sharing thoughts. "That's a reasonable request," Harrison said slowly. "Though I'm not sure how much we can share. Some of our systems are classified." Commander Martinez leaned forward. "Perhaps we could arrange a limited demonstration. Nothing that would reveal sensitive information, but enough to satisfy your reporting requirements." Dr. Collins touched one of his wrist devices. "I should point out that any demonstration of our primary systems could have unexpected consequences. The Leviathan operates on principles that most species don't fully understand." Crix's compound eyes focused on Collins. "What kind of principles?" "Advanced physics," Collins replied carefully. "We've made some breakthroughs in how we manipulate energy and matter. It allows us to build ships like this one." Vextar felt his unease growing. The humans were being polite, but they were clearly hiding something important. "Dr. Collins, our sensors detected power readings that seem impossible for a vessel of any size. How do you generate such energy without destroying your ship?" Collins smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "That's one of those classified areas I mentioned. Let's just say we've learned to work with forces that others consider dangerous." The door to the conference room opened, and another human walked in. She was young, maybe 30 years old, with short blonde hair and oil stains on her uniform. Harrison introduced her as Engineer Amy Watson. "Sorry I'm late," Watson said, sitting down at the table. "I was checking the temporal stabilizers. Everything's running smooth." Dr. Collins shot her a sharp look. "Amy, perhaps we should stick to general topics for now." "Oh, right." Watson looked embarrassed. "Sorry about that." Vextar's mind raced. Temporal stabilizers. What could that possibly mean? His species had theories about time manipulation, but they were just theories. No one had ever built technology that could actually affect time. "Temporal stabilizers?" Crix asked before Vexitar could stop him. The humans went very quiet. Harrison set down his cup carefully. Martinez's hands moved to rest flat on the table. Collins checked his wrist device again. "It's not what it sounds like," Watson said quickly. "Just part of our navigation system. Helps us stay on course during long trips." But Vextar had been a military officer for too long to miss the signs. Watson was lying. All of them were lying. And whatever they were hiding, it was something big. "Captain Harrison," Vexitar said formally, "I must insist on seeing a demonstration of your defensive capabilities. My government will expect a detailed report." Harrison was quiet for a long moment. Around the table, the other humans seemed to be waiting for his decision. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Very well. We can show you some of our passive defense systems. Nothing active, nothing that would be considered aggressive. That would be acceptable, Vextar replied. Collins stood up from the table. I need to prepare. The demonstration. It will take about an hour to set up safely. As Collins left the room, Watson followed him. Vexitar heard them talking in low voices in the hallway outside. He couldn't make out the words, but their tone sounded worried. Martinez tried to fill the silence with small talk about their respective homeworlds. She asked about Zephyrian culture and shared stories about Earth. But Vextar was barely listening. His mind kept going back to the strange things he had observed. The way the human crew moved in perfect coordination. The impossible power readings from the ship's engines. The mysterious temporal stabilizers. And now the humans' obvious reluctance to demonstrate their technology. Commander Martinez, he said, interrupting her story about Earth's oceans. How long have humans been building ships like this? The Leviathan is the first of her class, Martinez replied. But we've been working toward this level of technology for several decades. And other species? Have any of them seen ships like this before? Martinez paused. You're the first non-human delegation to visit a Titan-class vessel. That explained a lot. If this was humanity's newest and most advanced ship, then no one in the galaxy knew what humans were really capable of. The diplomatic implications were staggering. Crix leaned closer to Vextar and whispered in their native language. Captain, something feels wrong about this. The humans are hiding something important. Vexitar nodded slightly. He felt it too. But they were alone on a human ship, surrounded by 50,000 human crew members. If the humans decided to be unfriendly, there would be nothing the Zephyrians could do about it. An hour later, Collins and Watson returned. Both looked serious. The demonstration is ready, Collins announced. We'll be showing you our defensive energy fields. They're designed to protect the ship from attacks. Harrison stood up. Shall we head to the observation deck? As they walked through the corridors, Vexitar noticed more strange things. Human crew members they passed seemed to slow down slightly as the group went by. Not obviously, but enough that his enhanced vision caught it. It was as if the humans were moving through time at a slightly different rate than everything else. The observation deck offered a perfect view of space around the ship. Earth's yellow sun was visible in the distance, along with the familiar patterns of local star systems. The demonstration will begin in 5 minutes, Collins announced. You'll see energy fields form around the ship's hull. They're completely defensive in nature. Watson stood at a control panel, her fingers dancing over buttons and switches. Temporal field generators are online, she reported. All crew members are synchronized and ready. Collins winced at her words. Amy, please remember our guests don't need technical details. But Vextar had heard enough. Temporal fields. Synchronized crew members. Whatever the humans were about to show them, it involved manipulation of time itself. Captain Harrison, he said carefully, perhaps we should return to our ship before the demonstration begins. We wouldn't want to interfere with your systems. Harrison shook his head. You'll be perfectly safe here. The Leviathan's defensive systems are designed to protect everyone inside the field perimeter. Field perimeter. Vextar felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. The humans weren't just demonstrating defensive technology. They were about to show something that would change everything the Zephyrians thought they knew about physics, about space travel, about the balance of power in the galaxy. Beginning demonstration in 30 seconds, Watson called out. Vexitar looked out at the stars and wondered if he was about to witness something that would make his species obsolete. The stars looked different out here. Captain Vexitar pressed his 4 hands against the cool metal of the observation window and watched the emptiness of space. His ship, the Starwind Dancer, moved slowly through the neutral zone between human and Zephyrian space. This was routine patrol work, the kind of job that kept young crews busy and boarders safe. Vexitar's compound eyes could see far more than most beings. The infrared spectrum showed him heat signatures from distant suns. The ultraviolet range revealed cosmic dust patterns that painted beautiful pictures across the void. But today, something was wrong with what he saw. "Captain," called Lieutenant Crix from the sensor station. "We have a contact. Large signature bearing 27 Mark 5. Vexitar turned his insect-like head toward his tactical officer. Crix was young for a Zephyrian, only 30 cycles old, but he had good instincts. His antenna twitched as he read the incoming data. "How large?" Vexitar asked. Crix paused. His clawed fingers danced over the controls, checking the readings again. "Sir, the computer says it's impossible." "Show me." The main screen flickered to life. At first, Vexitar saw nothing but stars. Then the computer highlighted a shape in the distance, and his breathing stopped. The object was massive beyond anything he had ever seen. It looked like someone had taken a city and stretched it into the shape of a ship. "Distance?" he asked quietly. 50,000 kilometers and closing," Crix replied. "Sir, it's the size of a small moon." Vexitar felt his second stomach twist with worry. In his 40 years of service, he had seen many alien ships. The Karathi built long, needle-shaped vessels. The Delvani preferred sphere designs. The humans usually made their ships in simple box-like shapes. But this was different. This was beyond anything in the military databases. "Is it human?" he asked. "The signature matches human energy patterns," Crix confirmed. "But sir, our largest ships are only 2 kilometers long. This thing is over 50. The communications officer, a nervous young female named Zala, raised one of her hands. "Captain, we're receiving a signal. Put it on speaker." The bridge filled with static for a moment. Then a clear, calm voice spoke in perfect Zephyrian language. "Zephyrian vessel, Starwind Dancer, this is Captain Jake Harrison of the UHS Leviathan. We see you on our sensors. Do you require assistance?" Vexitar looked around his bridge. His crew's compound eyes were wide with surprise. Human ships never offered help to alien vessels. The two species maintained peace, but they kept their distance. "This is Captain Vexitar of the Starwind Dancer," he replied. "We are conducting routine patrol operations. We did not expect to encounter human vessels in this sector." "We're on a diplomatic mission to the Outer Rim," Captain Harrison's voice came back. "Our navigation computers show this area as neutral space. We hope we haven't violated any agreements." "No violation," Vexitar said quickly. "This is indeed neutral space. We are curious about your vessel. Our sensors indicate it is quite large." A sound that might have been laughter came through the speakers. "Yes, the Leviathan is one of our bigger ships. We're actually running crew training exercises. Would you be interested in a cultural exchange? We have facilities for alien visitors." Vexitar's mind raced. This was an opportunity that might never come again. The Zephyrian Council had always wanted to know more about human technology, but something felt strange about the whole situation. "That is a generous offer, Captain Harrison. We would be honored to visit your ship." "Excellent." We'll send you docking instructions. Fair warning, though. The Leviathan might seem a bit overwhelming at first. We built her to impress. The signal ended. Vextar turned to his crew. Crix, send a message to command. Let them know we're making contact with a human Titan-class vessel. Zala, prepare the diplomatic party, and someone find our universal translators. As the Starwind dancer moved closer to the human ship, more details became visible. The Leviathan's hull was black as space itself, covered with strange patterns that seemed to shift when Vextar wasn't looking directly at them. Weapon ports dotted the surface like stars in the night sky. Energy readings showed power levels that should have torn the ship apart. How is it even possible? Crix whispered. Vextar didn't have an answer. His species had been spacefaring for over 1,000 years. They understood the physics of large vessels. There were limits to how big a ship could be before its own mass became a problem. There were power requirements that couldn't be met. There were structural stresses that would break any known material. Yet here was a human ship that ignored all of those rules. The docking bay that opened for them was larger than most Zephyrian space stations. As their shuttle flew inside, Vexitar saw human crew members moving around the deck. They looked normal enough, 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. But something about the way they moved seemed different. They were too coordinated, too smooth in their actions. Captain Jake Harrison met them at the airlock. He was a tall human with gray hair and kind eyes. He wore a simple blue uniform with minimal decorations. "Welcome aboard the Leviathan," he said through the translator device. "I hope the trip over wasn't too rough." "Your ship is impressive, Captain Harrison," Vexitar replied. "We have never seen anything like it." Harrison smiled. "She's special, that's for sure. Come on, let me give you the tour." As they walked through the corridors, Vextar tried to understand what he was seeing. The hallways were wide enough for ground vehicles to drive through. The ceilings stretched up into darkness. Humans walked past them in small groups, always, moving with that strange, fluid coordination. "How many crew members do you carry?" Vexitar asked. "About 50,000. Harrison replied casually. Crix made a choking sound. 50,000 crew members was more than the population of most Zephyrian colonies. "That seems like a lot for one ship," Vextar said carefully. "It takes a lot of people to run a ship like this," Harrison explained. "Everyone has to work together. Coordination is very important." They passed through what Harrison called the main plaza. It was like a small city inside the ship, complete with trees and flowing water. Humans sat at tables, talking and laughing. Children played in open areas. It was beautiful and peaceful. But Vextar noticed something odd. Sometimes, when groups of humans moved past each other, they seemed to slow down slightly. Not enough for most beings to notice, but Vextar's enhanced vision caught the subtle changes. It was as if time itself moved differently around the human crew. "Your people seem very synchronized," he observed. Harrison's smile grew wider. "We've learned that working together makes everything easier. When everyone moves in harmony, amazing things can happen." As they continued the tour, Vexitar felt a growing unease. This wasn't just a big ship with a large crew. Something fundamental was different about the humans and their technology, something that his species didn't understand, and that frightened him more than he wanted to admit. Back on the Starwind Dancer, Ensign Zix watched his sensor displays with growing alarm. The human ship was doing something that made no sense. Energy readings were climbing to levels that should have been impossible. Power signatures danced across. his screen like angry ghosts. "What are they doing over there?" he whispered to himself. Zix was young, only 25 cycles old. This was his first deep space assignment, and he had never seen anything like the readings coming from the Leviathan. The massive human ship was generating enough energy to power a small star, but instead of destroying itself, the energy seemed to be contained within the ship's hull. The communications panel crackled to life. "Starwind Dancer, this is the Leviathan. We're beginning a defensive systems test. Please maintain your current position and do not be alarmed by any unusual sensor readings." Zix looked around the bridge of his ship. Only a skeleton crew remained while Captain Vexistar was visiting the humans. The senior officers were all away, leaving him as the most experienced person on duty. The responsibility felt heavy on his shoulders. "Acknowledged, Leviathan," he replied. "We will maintain position." But as the minutes passed, the energy readings kept climbing. Zix had studied alien technology at the military academy. He knew the theoretical limits of what any ship could generate. The humans were far beyond those limits now, and the numbers were still rising. His training told him that this level of energy buildup meant only one thing. The humans were preparing to attack. Maybe they had lured Captain Vextar aboard their ship as a hostage. Maybe this whole diplomatic meeting was a trap. Zix's hands moved to the weapons console. The Starwind Dancer was a small patrol ship, but it carried plasma cannons that could damage much larger vessels. If the humans were planning something, he had to be ready to defend his ship and his captain. The energy readings spiked again. Now they were showing levels that could destroy entire fleets. Zix felt his breathing speed up. His antenna twitched with fear and anger. On the Leviathan's observation deck, Watson called out the final countdown. 10 seconds to field activation. All systems showing green. Vextar pressed his face against the observation window, trying to see what was about to happen. The human ship looked normal from the outside, but his enhanced vision could detect subtle changes in the way light bent around the hull. 5 seconds, Watson announced. Dr. Collins checked his wrist device one more time. All crew members are synchronized. Temporal matrix is stable. Commander Martinez stood beside Captain Harrison, both of them watching the countdown with calm expressions. It was as if they had done this 1,000 times before. "Beginning demonstration," Watson said. Nothing visible happened at first. The stars looked the same. The Leviathan's hull remained unchanged. But Vextar's compound eyes caught something strange. The light from distant stars seemed to slow down slightly as it approached the human ship. Back on the Starwind Dancer, Zix watched his sensors go completely insane. The energy readings from the Leviathan suddenly jumped to levels that his equipment couldn't even measure. Warning alarms began sounding all over the bridge. "Computer, analyze human vessel energy signature," he commanded. "Analysis impossible," the computer replied in its calm voice. "Energy levels exceed maximum sensor capability. Recommend immediate retreat to safe distance." Zix felt panic rising in his chest. The humans had trapped his captain aboard their ship and were now powering up weapons that could destroy planets. He had to act quickly to save Captain Vextar and warn the Zephyrian fleet. His clawed fingers moved to the weapons panel. The plasma cannons were already charged and ready. He would fire a warning shot across the human ship's bow. That would let them know that the Zephyrians were not helpless, that they would fight back if threatened. "Charging main cannon," he announced to his small crew. The other Zephyrians on the bridge looked at him with surprise. "Ensign, are you sure that's wise?" asked the communications officer. "The humans are preparing to attack," Zix replied. "Look, At the energy readings, no ship generates that much power unless it's going to fire. He targeted a spot in empty space just ahead of the Leviathan's bow. The plasma burst would be visible but harmless, a clear warning that the Zephyrians were ready to defend themselves. "Firing warning shot," Zix called out. The plasma cannon discharged with a bright flash. A bolt of superheated energy streaked across the space between the two ships, aimed to pass safely in front of the Leviathan's massive hull. On the observation deck, Lieutenant Ben Parker was monitoring the demonstration when his sensors detected the incoming plasma burst. His training kicked in immediately. Any weapons fire near the ship during a temporal field activation could cause catastrophic interference. His hand moved to his control panel without conscious thought. He didn't slam down on a big red button or flip dramatic switches. Instead, he simply touched a small, unmarked surface with the tip of his index finger. The touch was so gentle, so casual, that it looked almost accidental, like someone absently tapping their finger on a table while thinking about something else. But the moment his finger made contact with the control surface, everything changed. The plasma burst from the Zephyrian ships stopped moving, not slowed down, not deflected, but completely frozen in space. The bright bolt of energy hung motionless between the two ships like a sculpture made of light. Vexitar stared out the observation window in shock. The plasma burst was perfectly still, its energy patterns locked in place as if someone had pressed a pause button on the universe itself. "What just happened?" he asked in a whisper. But it wasn't just the plasma burst. Looking more carefully, Vexitar realized that nothing was moving outside the observation window. The distant stars had stopped their slow rotation. Cosmic dust clouds hung motionless in space. Even the background radiation of the universe seemed to have frozen. Dr. Collins checked his wrist device and nodded with satisfaction. "Temporal isolation is active and stable. We now exist in our own time stream, completely separate from the rest of the universe." Commander Martinez turned to Vexitar with the apologetic expression. "I'm sorry you had to see this. We were hoping to keep the demonstration simple." Captain Harrison walked to the observation window and looked out at the frozen plasma burst. "Your young officer just made this situation much more complicated. We'll need to decide how much we can tell you about our real capabilities." Vexitar felt his legs go weak. The humans hadn't just demonstrated defensive technology. They had stopped time itself. The plasma burst from his ship, the movement of stars, the flow of cosmic radiation. Everything in the universe had frozen except for the space immediately around the Leviathan. "How is this possible?" he managed to ask. Engineer Watson looked up from her control panel. "The simple explanation is that we've learned to manipulate temporal fields. The complicated explanation involves quantum consciousness theory and synchronized neural networks. But the energy requirements alone," Vexitar started to say, "are manageable when you have 50,000 human minds working together," Dr. Collins finished. "Individual human consciousness is limited. But when we synchronize our thoughts, we can affect the fundamental structure of space-time." Vexitar looked around at the human crew members on the observation deck. They were all standing calmly, as if stopping time was the most normal thing in the universe. None of them seemed surprised or frightened by what had just happened. "Your entire crew is part of this?" he asked. "Every person on the Leviathan," Harrison confirmed. "We trained for years to achieve this level of synchronization. The bigger the ship, the more minds we can link together, the greater our control over temporal fields." Outside the window, the frozen plasma burst continued to hang in space like a monument to impossible physics. Vexitar realized that everything he thought he knew about technology, about the balance of power in the galaxy, about the limits of what was possible, had just been proven wrong. The humans had not just built a bigger ship. They had transcended the normal rules of existence itself. Vextar stood frozen at the observation window, but not because of any human technology. His own mind had simply stopped working properly. Everything he had learned about physics, about space travel, about what was possible in the universe had become meaningless in the span of a few seconds. The plasma burst from his ship, hung in space like a bright flower made of energy. It wasn't moving at all, not even vibrating. The individual particles of the plasma were locked in perfect stillness, as if the universe itself had forgotten how to move forward. "Captain Vextar," Commander Martinez said gently, "I know this is difficult to understand. Would you like to sit down?" Vextar turned to look at her. The human woman's face showed genuine concern, but also something else. Sadness, maybe, or pity. "How long?" he asked quietly. "How long what?" Dr. Collins replied. "How long can you keep time frozen like this?" The humans exchanged glances. It was that same coordinated look Vexitar had noticed before, as if they were sharing thoughts without speaking. "As long as we need to," Captain Harrison answered. "There's no practical limit. We could keep this temporal field active for days, weeks, even years if necessary." Lieutenant Crix made a sound that was part gasp and part whimper. The young Zephyrian's compound eyes were wide with terror. "You could freeze the entire galaxy? Theoretically, yes," Engineer Watson said from her control panel. "But that would require a lot more ships like the Leviathan. Right now, our field only extends about 100,000 kilometers in all directions. Only 100,000 kilometers." Vextar almost laughed at the absurdity of it. That was enough space to hold dozens of normal-sized ships. The humans were treating it like it was nothing. Dr. Collins walked over to join them at the observation window. "I should explain what you're seeing. The temporal field creates a bubble around our ship where time moves at our chosen rate. Outside the bubble, time has effectively stopped. Inside, we can experience minutes, hours, or days, while the rest of the universe experiences nothing at all. But the energy requirements," Vextar said weakly. "To stop time itself would take the power of a star. It would if we were using traditional energy sources," Collins agreed. "But consciousness isn't bound by the same physical laws as matter and energy. When human minds work together in perfect synchronization, we can create effects that seem impossible." Harrison stepped closer to the window. "Every person on this ship is connected to every other person through quantum entanglement. At the neural level, we think as one mind, move as one body, exist as one consciousness. That unified consciousness can manipulate the fundamental forces of reality." Vextar felt his second stomach twist with nausea. "Your entire crew shares the same mind?" "Not exactly," Watson said. "We're still individuals with our own thoughts and personalities. But we can synchronize our consciousness when needed. It takes years of training to learn how to do it safely." "Safely?" Crix asked. "The human mind wasn't designed to merge with other minds," Collins explained. "If it's done wrong, people can lose their individual identity forever. They become part of a collective consciousness that can never be separated again." Martinez nodded grimly. "We've lost people during training. It's one of the risks of developing this technology." Vexitar stared out at the frozen plasma burst and tried to understand what the humans were telling him. They had learned to link their minds together to manipulate time and space. The cost was the risk of losing their individual selves. And they had built an entire ship full of people willing to take that risk. Why? He asked. Why develop such dangerous technology? Harrison was quiet for a long moment. Because we knew we weren't alone in the galaxy. We knew that someday we would meet other species, and we wanted to be ready. Ready for what? For anything, Harrison replied simply. Some species might be friendly. Others might be hostile. A few might be so advanced that we couldn't hope to defend ourselves with conventional weapons, so we decided to transcend conventional physics entirely. Watson looked up from her control panel. Captain, I'm getting a priority communication from Earth Command. Admiral Grace Foster wants to speak with you. Harrison nodded. Put her through on a secure channel. A new voice filled the observation deck, speaking through hidden speakers. Captain Harrison, this is Admiral Foster. What's your status? We've had to activate temporal isolation, Admiral. A Zephyrian patrol ship fired on us during the demonstration. Were they trying to attack you? Negative. It appears to be a warning shot fired by a nervous junior officer. The blast was aimed to miss us. There was a pause before the Admiral spoke again. Captain, you have 2 alien beings aboard your ship who have now witnessed our temporal capabilities. What do you recommend? Vextar realized that his fate was being decided by voices speaking across impossible distances. The humans could communicate instantly across light years of space, even while time was frozen around their ship. I recommend full disclosure, Admiral, Harrison said. Captain Vextar and his officer have seen too much to accept any cover story we might create. Are you certain about their intentions? Harrison looked directly at Vextar. Captain, I need you to answer a question honestly. Are you here as a diplomat seeking peaceful contact or as a military scout gathering intelligence? For possible invasion? The question hung in the air like the frozen plasma burst outside. Vextar realized that his answer might determine not just his own fate, but the future relationship between their 2 species. I am a military officer, he said carefully, but this was a routine patrol mission. We had no knowledge of your ship's capabilities before today. My government sent no orders regarding humans except to maintain peaceful contact if encountered. Admiral Foster's voice came through the speakers again. Captain Vextar, this is Admiral Grace Foster of Earth Defense Command. I'm going to share some classified information with you, and I need your word that you'll handle it responsibly. You have my word, Admiral. The Leviathan is not our only Titan-class ship. We currently have 12 vessels like her with more under construction. Each one carries between 40 and 60,000 crew members, all trained in consciousness synchronization. Together, they represent the most powerful fleet in the known galaxy. Vextar felt his legs go weak again. 12 ships like the Leviathan, each one capable of stopping time itself. Humanity could freeze entire star systems, manipulate space, and time on a scale that no other species could match. Why are you telling me this? He asked. Because we want you to understand that humanity is not a threat to peaceful species, Admiral Foster replied. But we are also not helpless. If any species decides to attack Earth or human colonies, they will face consequences beyond their ability to imagine. Dr. Collins checked his wrist device. Admiral, maintaining temporal isolation is becoming noticeable to our neighboring star systems. We should resolve this situation soon. Agreed. Captain Harrison, offer our guests a choice. They can return to their ship with a limited knowledge of our capabilities, or they can remain for extended cultural exchange to better understand the implications of temporal technology. Harrison turned to Vextar. The choice is yours, Captain. But understand that either way, the galaxy has changed today. Humanity is no longer just another spacefaring species. We've become something new. Vextar looked out at the frozen plasma burst one more time. In a few moments, the humans would restart time, and that bolt of energy would continue harmlessly past their ship. But nothing else would ever be the same. His species had spent 1,000 years believing they understood the limits of physics and technology. Today they had learned that a young species called humanity had transcended those limits entirely. The question now was what the Zephyrians would do with that knowledge. Vextar stared at the frozen plasma burst for what felt like hours, though he knew only minutes had passed. Time was a strange thing when you could control it. The humans waited patiently for his answer, showing no signs of impatience or pressure. Finally, he turned away from the window. "I choose to stay and learn more about your technology. My people need to understand what humanity has become." Lieutenant Crix looked at his captain with surprise. "Sir, shouldn't we report back to command immediately?" "What would we tell them?" Vextar asked. "That humans can stop time? That they have ships the size of moons? That everything we thought we knew about physics is wrong? They would think we had lost our minds." Captain Harrison nodded approvingly. "A wise choice, Captain. Dr. Collins will be your guide during your extended stay. He can explain our technology in terms that your scientists will understand." "How long will this education take?" Vexitar asked. "That depends on how much you want to learn," Collins replied. "The basic principles can be covered in a few days, but understanding the full implications could take months or years." Engineer Watson looked up from her control panel. "Captain Harrison, should I begin temporal restoration?" "Yes, but do it gradually. Let's not shock young Ensign Zix too badly." Watson's fingers moved across her controls with practiced ease. "Beginning temporal restoration. Time differential reducing to normal in 30 seconds. Vextar watched the frozen plasma burst through the observation window. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, it began to move again. The bright bolt of energy continued its harmless journey past the Leviathan's hull, just as Ensign Zix had intended. "Amazing," Crix whispered. "It's as if nothing happened at all." "From your ship's perspective, nothing did happen," Collins explained. "They experienced no time at all during our temporal isolation. To them, their plasma burst traveled from their ship to this point without any delay. The communication system crackled to life. Leviathan, this is Ensign Zix aboard the Starwind Dancer. Our sensors detected some unusual energy fluctuations during our weapons test. Is everything normal on your end?" Harrison activated the communication panel. "Everything is fine, Ensign Zix. We detected your warning shot and appreciate your caution. Our defensive systems automatically activated when your plasma burst was detected, but there was no damage to either vessel." "Understood, Leviathan. My apologies for the weapons discharge. I was concerned about the high energy readings from your ship." "No apology necessary, Ensign. Your concern was understandable given the circumstances." Commander Martinez stepped forward. "Captain Vextar, would you like to speak with your crew? They're probably worried about you." Vextar activated his personal communicator. "Starwind Dancer, this is Captain Vextar. I am safe and well aboard the human vessel. I will be extending my visit for several days to conduct detailed cultural exchanges." Zix's voice came back immediately. "Captain, are you certain? Our orders were for a brief diplomatic contact only." "I am certain, Ensign. Send a message to Zephyrian Command. Tell them we have encountered advanced human technology that requires extended study. I will provide a full report when our mission is complete." "Yes, sir." Should we maintain our current position? Affirmative. Stand by for further orders. After closing the communication link, Vextar turned to Dr. Collins. Where do we begin? With the basics, Collins replied. Let me show you to our science laboratories. You'll want to see how consciousness synchronization actually works. As they walked through the corridors of the Leviathan, Vexitar noticed more details that had escaped him during his first tour. The human crew members weren't just coordinated in their movements, they seemed to be aware of each other's thoughts and intentions. When one person needed to pass through a doorway, others would move aside before being asked. When someone reached for an object, others would hand it to them without being asked. It's like watching a dance, Crix observed quietly. That's not a bad analogy, Collins said. Consciousness synchronization does create a kind of mental choreography. Everyone knows their part, and everyone moves in harmony with everyone else. They entered a large laboratory filled with strange equipment. Banks of computers lined the walls, their screens showing patterns that looked like brain waves. In the center of the room, a group of humans sat in a circle with their eyes closed, their breathing perfectly synchronized. This is where we train new crew members, Collins explained. Learning to synchronize consciousness takes months of careful practice. Dr. Neil Brooks, a middle-aged man with graying hair, looked up from a computer terminal. Pete, good to see. You? Are these our Zephyrian guests? Captain Vextar and Lieutenant Crix, Collins confirmed. They've chosen to stay for extended cultural exchange. Brooks nodded approvingly. Excellent. I was hoping we'd get a chance to study alien neural patterns. Your species might have natural abilities we haven't discovered yet. What do you mean? Vexitar asked. Human consciousness is naturally individual, Brooks explained. We had to learn how to link our minds together through technology and training, but some species might have evolved with naturally collective consciousness. He led them to a wall covered with brain scan images. These show the neural patterns of synchronized human crews. Notice how the brain waves match perfectly across all individuals. Crix studied the images with fascination. The patterns are identical. How is that possible? Quantum entanglement at the neural level, Brooks replied. When human neurons become quantumly entangled with neurons in other brains, thoughts and intentions become shared across the entire group. But doesn't that destroy individual identity? Vexitar asked. Not if it's done correctly, Collins said. We maintain our individual personalities and memories. We just share our conscious awareness when needed. Think of it like musicians in an orchestra. They play different instruments but follow the same conductor. Brooks gestured to the group of humans sitting in the circle. Watch this demonstration. I'm going to ask them to perform a simple task without speaking to each other. He walked over to a table and placed 5 different colored blocks on its surface. Then he returned to the observers. Think of a pattern, he said to Vextar. Any arrangement of those blocks? Vextar thought for a moment. A pyramid with the red block on top. Brooks nodded and then simply looked at the group of humans. He didn't speak or make any gestures, but immediately the humans opened their eyes and walked to the table. Working together without a word, they arranged the blocks into a perfect pyramid with the red block on top. How did they know? Crix asked in amazement. I shared the information with them through our neural link, Brooks explained. When humans are properly synchronized, information can pass instantly between minds. Vextar felt his understanding of the universe shift again. And this is how you control your temporal technology? Exactly, Collins confirmed. Manipulating. Time and space requires perfect coordination between thousands of minds. Every person on this ship must think and act as one consciousness. Any discord or individual action could cause the temporal field to collapse or become unstable. What would happen if the field became unstable? Vexatar asked. Brooks and Collins exchanged worried glances. We're not entirely sure, Brooks admitted. Our computer models suggest that an unstable temporal field could create paradoxes, time loops, or even tears in the fabric of space-time itself. The risk is why we're so careful about who we allow on board during temporal operations, Collins added. A single person thinking the wrong thoughts at the wrong time could endanger not just our ship, but the entire local region of space. Vextar looked around the laboratory with new understanding. The humans hadn't just built a powerful ship. They had created something that required absolute trust, perfect coordination, and complete unity of purpose among thousands of individuals. The level of cooperation required must be extraordinary, he observed. It is, Collins agreed. That's why not everyone can serve on a Titan-class ship. The selection process takes years, and the training takes years more. We lose about half of our candidates during the preparation phase. But those who succeed become part of something larger than any individual could achieve alone, Brooks added. They become part of a consciousness that can reshape reality itself. As Vextar watched the synchronized humans working together, he began to understand why humanity had developed such incredible technology. It wasn't just about building bigger ships or more powerful weapons. It was about transcending the limitations of individual consciousness to become something entirely new. 3 days had passed since the plasma burst incident, and Vextar felt like his brain was ready to explode, not from any human technology, but from trying to understand concepts that his species had never imagined. He sat in his assigned quarters, aboard the Leviathan, reviewing notes that made less sense each time he read them. Lieutenant Crix knocked on his door. Captain, Dr. Brooks wants to show us something in the communication center. Vextar set aside his notes with relief. Perhaps this will make more sense than quantum consciousness theory. They made their way through the ship's corridors, which Vextar now realized were designed for more than just transportation. The walls contained hidden sensors that monitored the neural activity of everyone who passed by. The lighting adjusted automatically to support the crew's synchronized brainwaves. Even the air circulation system was tuned to help maintain mental harmony among the ship's 50,000 residents. The communication center was unlike anything Vexatar had seen before. Instead of normal radio equipment, the room was filled with what looked like meditation chambers. Humans sat quietly in comfortable chairs, their eyes closed and their breathing synchronized. Screens around the room showed star maps, ship positions, and streaming data from across the galaxy. This is how we maintain contact with other human ships and colonies, Dr. Brooks explained. Traditional radio signals travel at the speed of light, which means messages between star systems can take years to arrive. But consciousness can communicate instantly across any distance. Ambassador Carl Hughes, a distinguished man with silver hair, stood up from one of the meditation chairs. Captain Vextar, good to see you again. I was just speaking with the Mars colony about your visit here. Speaking with Mars? Vexatar asked. But Mars is light minutes away from here. Distance doesn't matter when minds are quantumly entangled, Hughes explained. Every human settlement has trained telepaths who can link their consciousness with telepaths on other worlds. Information travels instantly between connected minds. Dr. Brooks led them to a large screen showing a map of human space. Look at this, Captain. Every dot represents a human colony or ship. The lines show active neural communication links. Vextar stared at the display in growing horror. The map showed hundreds of human settlements connected by thousands of communication lines. It was like looking at a vast nervous system spread across dozens of star systems. "You have telepaths on every world?" Crix asked weakly. "Not just telepaths," Hughes corrected. "Every human colony has at least a dozen people trained in long-range consciousness projection. They can share thoughts, experiences, and information instantly with anyone else in the network." "But what about privacy?" Vexitar asked. "Individual thoughts?" "The network respects personal boundaries," Brooks assured him. "Trained operators only share information that's meant to be shared. Personal thoughts and private memories remain private unless someone chooses to share them." A young woman at one of the meditation stations opened her eyes and looked at Hughes. "Sir, I have an urgent message from the Titan-class ship Colossus. They've encountered a Karathi battle fleet near the Vega system." Hughes nodded and walked to another meditation chair. "Put me in contact with Captain Murphy aboard the Colossus." The woman closed her eyes again. Within seconds, Hughes was speaking to empty air. "Captain Murphy, this is Ambassador Hughes. What's your situation?" To Vexitar's amazement, a voice seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. "Ambassador, we have 12 Karathi warships demanding that we leave their territory. They claim this system belongs to them now." "Have they made any aggressive moves?" Hughes asked. "Not yet, but their weapons are charged and ready. I think they're testing us to see how we'll respond." Hughes looked at Dr. Brooks. "Doctor, how many other Titan-class ships are within range of Vega?" Brooks closed his eyes for a moment, accessing the communication network. "The Behemoth is 2 days away, and the Titan is 3 days out, but that's using conventional travel." "What about temporal displacement?" Hughes asked. "Both ships could be at Vega in less than an hour if they used temporal acceleration fields." Vextar felt his compound eyes widen. "You can move faster than light by manipulating time?" "Not faster than light exactly," Brooks explained. "We create temporal fields that accelerate our ships through time while keeping them stationary in space. From our perspective, we travel normally. From everyone else's perspective, we arrive almost instantly." Hughes was still communicating with the distant ship. "Captain Murphy, you are authorized to demonstrate our temporal capabilities if the Karathi become aggressive. But try to resolve this peacefully if possible." "Understood, Ambassador. Murphy out." The telepathic connection ended, and Hughes turned to Vextar. "Now you see why we needed to develop this technology. The galaxy is a dangerous place, and humanity is still relatively young compared to species like the Karathi. The Karathi have been spacefaring for 3,000 years, Crix observed. They have powerful ships and advanced weapons." "Conventional weapons," Brooks corrected. "Plasma cannons, missile systems, energy shields. All impressive, but limited by the normal laws of physics. When you can stop time or accelerate through temporal fields, conventional weapons become irrelevant." Another telepathic operator called out from across the room. "Ambassador, I'm getting reports from multiple colonies. Word about our temporal capabilities is spreading through alien communication networks. Several species are requesting diplomatic meetings." Hughes sighed. "It was inevitable. Once one species knows about our technology, the information spreads quickly." "Is that a problem?" Vextar asked. "It depends on how other species react," Hughes replied. Some will want to establish closer relations with humanity. Others might see us as a threat that needs to be eliminated before we become too powerful. Dr. Brooks pulled up another display showing alien territories throughout the galaxy. We estimate there are at least 40 spacefaring species within 100 light-years of Earth. Most of them have been watching humanity's expansion with growing concern. "They're afraid of us?" Vextar asked. "They're afraid of change," Hughes said. "For thousands of years, the balance of power in this galaxy has been stable. The same species have controlled the same territories, fought the same wars, maintained the same alliances. Humanity represents something completely new." A new voice came through the telepathic network. "Ambassador Hughes, this is Admiral Foster on Earth. We're receiving communication requests from over a dozen alien governments. They all want to discuss humanity's temporal technology." "What kind of discussions?" Hughes asked. "Everything from trade negotiations to security treaties to demands that we limit our technological development." Hughes looked at Vextar with a thoughtful expression. "Captain, your species was the first to witness our temporal capabilities. How do you think the Zephyrian government will react when you make your report?" Vextar considered the question carefully. "My people are practical. We value scientific advancement and peaceful cooperation. I believe the Zephyrian Council will want to establish formal diplomatic relations with humanity. And other species? That's more difficult to predict. The Karathi are aggressive and territorial. The Delvani are isolationist and suspicious of change. The Zenthari are traders who care only about profit." Crix shifted nervously. "Captain, what if some species decide that humanity is too dangerous to be allowed to exist?" The question hung in the air like a threat. Hughes and Brooks exchanged worried glances. "That's a possibility we've considered," Hughes admitted. "It's one reason why we've been building more Titan-class ships. If other species decide to unite against humanity, we need to be ready to defend ourselves." "How many ships do you have now?" Vextar asked. Brooks checked the communication network again. 15 Titan-class vessels are operational, with 8 more under construction. Each ship represents the pinnacle of human technology and consciousness synchronization. 23 ships that can stop time, Crix whispered. "A fleet that could control the entire galaxy." "We don't want to control the galaxy," Hughes said firmly. "We just want to ensure that humanity survives and prospers. But we won't be victims either." The telepathic operator called out again. "Ambassador, Admiral Foster wants to know if you think it's time to contact the Galactic Council." Hughes considered this for a moment. "Tell the Admiral that I think we should arrange a formal presentation to the Council within the next few weeks. It's better if we reveal our capabilities on our own terms, rather than letting rumors and fear shape the galaxy's perception of humanity." As Vextar listened to the humans planning their diplomatic strategy, he realized that his species and every other species in the galaxy was about to face a choice that would define the future. They could try to work with humanity as equals, or they could try to destroy humanity before it became too powerful to stop. Either way, the galaxy would never be the same. A week later, Vextar stood in the Leviathan's main conference hall watching history unfold. Representatives from 18 different alien species had arrived to meet with humanity's diplomatic team. The room buzzed with nervous energy as beings who had never trusted each other were forced to work together in the face of humanity's overwhelming technological advantage. The Karathi delegation sat at one end of the massive table, their red-scaled bodies tense with barely controlled aggression. Supreme War Leader Krexnor kept his clawed hands visible on the table, a sign of peaceful intentions among his people. But his yellow eyes never stopped moving, constantly scanning for threats. Across from the Karathi, The Delvani representatives floated in their environmental suits, their gaseous forms shifting colors to indicate mood. Currently, they were a deep purple that Vextar recognized as extreme caution. Ambassador Hughes stood at the head of the table, looking calm despite the tension in the room. Thank you all for coming. I know this gathering required considerable courage from each of your governments. Courage? War Leader Krexnor growled. We came because your species represents a threat to the natural order of the galaxy. We want to know your intentions. A melodic voice came from the Zenthari trade representative, a being that looked like a giant butterfly with crystalline wings. My people are more interested in opportunities than threats. Humanity's technology could revolutionize interstellar commerce. Dr. Brooks activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. Before we discuss intentions or opportunities, let me explain what humanity has actually accomplished. The display zoomed in on the Sol system, showing Earth and its colonies. 5 years ago, humanity was limited to a single star system. We had conventional faster-than-light drives and standard defensive weapons. We were, by galactic standards, a minor species with limited potential. The image shifted to show the current extent of human space. Today, humanity controls territory spanning 47 star systems. We have 15 operational Titan-class ships, with more under construction. Our telepathic communication network allows instant coordination across hundreds of light years. A new voice spoke from the far end of the table. The Helix representative was a machine intelligence, its body a collection of floating metal spheres that rearranged themselves as it spoke. Your expansion rate exceeds all historical precedents. How did you achieve such rapid growth? Consciousness synchronization, Dr. Brooks replied simply. When human minds work together in perfect harmony, we can manipulate the fundamental forces of reality. This allows us to transcend normal limitations on space travel, communication, and energy generation. The Delvani representative's gaseous form shifted to a bright orange. You claim to manipulate reality itself. Prove it. Hughes nodded to Captain Harrison, who was standing near the back of the room. Captain, please demonstrate our temporal capabilities. Harrison touched a small device on his wrist. Immediately, everything in the conference room except the humans slowed to a crawl. The alien representatives became like living statues, their movements barely perceptible. As you can see, Hughes said calmly, we exist in our own temporal framework. From your perspective, this conversation is happening in real time. But we could accelerate our time stream and hold discussions that would last hours from our perspective, while only seconds pass for you. Harrison touched his device again, and normal time resumed. The alien representatives looked around in confusion, realizing that something had happened but unable to perceive what. War Leader Krexnor's claws extended slightly. What did you just do? We briefly accelerated our temporal perception, Hughes explained. It's one of our more basic capabilities. The Helix machine intelligence hummed with electronic sounds. Temporal manipulation on this scale should be impossible. Our calculations suggest it would require energy equivalent to a star's output. Traditional physics would require that much energy, Dr. Brooks agreed. But consciousness operates outside normal physical laws. When enough human minds synchronize their quantum states, they can create effects that appear impossible to conventional science. Vextar watched the alien representatives struggle to understand what they were being told. Some, like the Zenthari trader, seemed excited by the possibilities. Others, like the Korathi war leader, appeared increasingly hostile. A new voice joined the conversation. The Centauri ambassador was an ancient being whose species had been spacefaring for over 10,000 years. In all our recorded history, no species has achieved this level of reality manipulation. How do we know you won't use these abilities to conquer the galaxy? Hughes stepped forward. Because conquest isn't our goal. We want to coexist peacefully with other species. But we also won't allow ourselves to be victimized by those who see our rapid advancement as a threat. Empty words, Krexnor snarled. Every species claims peaceful intentions until they become powerful enough to ignore them. The Delvani representative's color shifted to bright red. Our intelligence networks report that humanity is building a fleet capable of stopping time throughout entire star systems. Such power could eliminate any opposition before it could react. That's true, Hughes admitted. But consider this. If humanity wanted to conquer the galaxy, why would we be here talking to you? We could have simply appeared in your home systems and demanded surrender. A chittering sound came from the insectoid Vexmori representative. Perhaps you're gathering information about our defensive capabilities before launching attacks. Dr. Brooks activated another holographic display. Let me show you something that might change your perspective. The image showed a detailed star map of the local galactic region. Our long-range sensors have detected something disturbing. There's a massive dark matter anomaly moving toward this region of the galaxy. Our scientists estimate it will arrive within 50 years. The room fell silent as the alien representatives studied the display. The dark matter structure was enormous, spanning several light years and moving at incredible speed. What is it? The Zenthari representative asked quietly. We're not certain, Brooks replied. It could be a natural phenomenon, or it could be technology created by an intelligence far more advanced than any of our species. Either way, it represents a potential threat to every world in this region. The Centauri ambassador leaned forward. You're suggesting that our petty territorial disputes are irrelevant in the face of this larger threat? Exactly, Hughes said. Humanity developed our temporal technology not to conquer other species, but to prepare for challenges that conventional physics can't address. This dark matter anomaly is one such challenge. War leader. Krexnor's aggressive posture softened slightly. You have evidence that this anomaly is dangerous? Our temporal scouts have observed possible futures where the anomaly passes through. Inhabited systems, Dr. Brooks explained. In every timeline we've examined, planets are stripped of their atmospheres and all life is extinguished. The room erupted in concerned chatter as representatives spoke among themselves in their native languages. Vextar felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. If the humans were telling the truth, then every species in the galaxy faced extinction within 50 years. Hughes raised his hand for quiet. We're proposing an alliance, not conquest, not subjugation, but cooperation. Humanity will share our temporal technology with any species willing to work together to address the coming threat. Share your technology? The Helix representative asked. Why would you give away your greatest advantage? Because consciousness synchronization requires willing participants, Dr. Brooks explained. We can't force other species to develop these abilities, but we can teach them to those who want to learn. The Zenthari trader's wings shimmered with excitement. What would you want in return? Resource sharing, scientific cooperation, and a commitment to peaceful coexistence, Hughes replied. We need access to materials and knowledge that only a galactic alliance can provide. Vextar realized that the entire meeting had been carefully planned. The humans hadn't just revealed their technology to intimidate other species. They had done it to unite the galaxy against a threat that no single species could face alone. War. Leader Krexnor was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. If we agree to this alliance, how do we know humanity won't use their temporal abilities to control us? Because, Hughes said simply, we'll teach you how to defend against temporal manipulation. Every species in the Alliance will have access to the same protective technologies that will make our weapons useless against you. The proposal hung in the air like a promise of salvation or destruction. Vextar looked around the room at representatives of species that had been enemies for millennia, now faced with the choice of working together or facing extinction alone. The galaxy was about to change forever. 6 months after the historic meeting aboard the Leviathan, Vextar stood on the observation deck of the first joint human-Zephyrian research station. The facility orbited a small moon in neutral space, its design a blend of human temporal technology and Zephyrian engineering expertise. Through the vast windows, he could see ships from dozens of different species arriving and departing. Karathi warships worked alongside Delvani science vessels. Zenthari traders transported materials between human colonies and alien worlds. The galaxy had changed more in 6 months than it had in the previous 1,000 years. Lieutenant Crix approached from behind, his movements more confident than they had been during their first encounter with the humans. "Captain, the morning briefing is about to begin. Dr. Brooks wants to show us the latest progress reports." Vexitar turned away from the window. "Any word from the deep space monitoring stations?" "The dark matter anomaly is still 47 years away," Crix replied. "But it's definitely on course for our region of the galaxy." They walked through corridors that would have seemed impossible just months ago. Human crew members worked side by side with aliens, their movements synchronized not through technology, but through mutual understanding and shared purpose. The consciousness synchronization techniques that had once been humanity's greatest secret were now being taught to volunteers from every species in the Alliance. The briefing room was filled with beings that Vextar never could have imagined working together. Dr. Brooks stood at the front, his presentation showing progress on dozens of joint research projects. Beside him, a Karathi scientist named Vexkara translated for those who didn't understand human languages. "The temporal defense grid is ahead of schedule," Brooks announced. "We now have protective stations around the home systems of all Alliance members. Any temporal attack will be automatically neutralized." War leader Krexnor, who had become an unlikely advocate for the Alliance, raised one clawed hand. "What about offensive capabilities? Can we use temporal weapons against the anomaly if necessary?" "That's more complicated," Brooks replied. "Our simulations suggest that temporal weapons might actually accelerate the anomaly's approach. We're focusing on defensive and evacuation strategies." A melodic voice came from the Zenthari representative. "The evacuation fleet construction is also proceeding well. We now have the capacity to relocate the populations of 12 worlds simultaneously." Vextar felt a mixture of pride and sadness as he listened to the reports. The galaxy had united as never before, but only in the face of potential extinction. Billions of beings were working together to survive a threat that might destroy everything they had ever known. Dr. Neil Brooks activated a new display showing the current state of consciousness synchronization training. "We've made remarkable progress in teaching temporal manipulation to other species. The Zephyrians have shown particular aptitude for neural linking." This was true. Vextar's own people had discovered that their compound eyes and complex nervous systems made them natural telepaths. With human training, Zephyrian crews could now operate their own time manipulation devices, though not with the precision and power of human Titan-class ships. The Delvani have also achieved breakthrough results, Brooks continued. Their gaseous forms allow for consciousness distribution that even humans can't match. A single Delvani individual can link with hundreds of other minds simultaneously. The Delvani representative's form shifted to a pleased golden color. We have learned much from human techniques, but we have also contributed our own knowledge of quantum states and energy manipulation. Even the machine intelligences of the Helix had found ways to participate. Their artificial minds could process temporal calculations at incredible speeds, making them invaluable for navigation and coordination during large-scale operations. Ambassador Hughes, who had been promoted to Director of Alliance Relations, stood up to address the room. I want to share some remarkable news. Our deep space scouts have detected something unexpected. A new holographic display appeared, showing a region of space far beyond the approaching anomaly. We found evidence of other civilizations that have faced similar threats. There are remnants of massive defensive structures, some of them millions of years old. The room buzzed with excited conversation. The possibility that other species had survived similar threats offered hope that the current alliance might succeed as well. Our temporal scouts have attempted to observe these ancient civilizations, Hughes continued. What we've learned is both encouraging and sobering. Some species did survive encounters with dark matter anomalies, but only those that achieved complete unity across their entire civilization. War Leader Krexnor leaned forward. Complete unity? What does that mean? It means, Dr. Brooks explained, that survival required not just technological cooperation, but true consciousness integration across all species. The successful civilizations eventually became single collective entities spanning multiple worlds and species. The implications hung in the air like a challenge. To survive, the alliance would have to become something more than a military partnership. They would have to become a single unified consciousness. Vextar thought about his own experiences over the past months. He had learned to synchronize his thoughts with human telepaths. He had shared memories and emotions with beings from dozens of different worlds. The process had been difficult and sometimes frightening, but it had also been transformative. Is that what we're working toward? He asked quietly. A collective consciousness for the entire galaxy? Hughes nodded slowly. It's the only way we've found that offers a real chance of survival. The anomaly isn't just a physical threat. Our temporal scouts have observed that it also disrupts individual consciousness, breaking down the mental barriers that separate one mind from another. Without proper preparation, Brooks added, contact with the anomaly would cause all conscious beings in this region to merge into a chaotic, uncontrolled collective. Billions of minds would be trapped together without any individual identity or purpose. The Helix representatives' metal spheres rearranged themselves in what Vextar had learned was their equivalent of thoughtful consideration. But if we prepare by gradually integrating our consciousness voluntarily, we can maintain our individual identities within a larger collective framework. Exactly, Hughes confirmed. We become one mind with billions of perspectives instead of billions of minds trapped together in chaos. As the briefing continued, Vextar found himself looking around the room with new understanding. The beings gathered here weren't just allies working toward a common goal. They were the early stages of something entirely new, a galactic consciousness. that would preserve the best aspects of every species while creating something greater than any of them could achieve alone. Months later, Vex-Tar stood once again on the observation deck, but this time he was aboard a new type of vessel. The Unity was the first ship designed and built by the collective consciousness of the Alliance. It incorporated the best technology and ideas from every member species, powered by the synchronized minds of volunteers from dozens of worlds. Through the viewing windows, he could see the edge of Alliance space, where massive defensive stations waited for the approaching anomaly. Each station was staffed by integrated crews whose consciousness spanned multiple species. They were ready for whatever challenge the dark matter phenomenon might bring. Lieutenant Crix joined him at the window, but their communication now went far beyond spoken words. Through their neural link, they shared not just thoughts, but emotions, memories, and hopes for the future. "Do you think we'll succeed?" Crix asked, both aloud and through their mental connection. Vex-Tar considered the question while simultaneously accessing the thoughts and experiences of thousands of other beings throughout the Alliance. The collective consciousness they had become was vast and complex, but it was also unified in its determination to survive and protect the worlds they called home. "We're no longer the same species that first encountered the humans," he replied. "We've become something new, something that the galaxy has never seen before. Whether we succeed or fail, we face the future together." As he watched ships from across the galaxy work in perfect harmony, Vex-Tar realized that the young Ensign Zix's warning shot had triggered more than just a demonstration of human temporal technology. It had started a transformation that had changed every conscious being in their region of space. The galaxy would never be the same, but perhaps that was exactly what it needed to be.